It is the starter of Metabee 5 and the resident of Susutaki Village and one of my personal favorites of all time. It is KBT0C Chrotojil with a kit of missile, rifle, Gatling, biped legs, and the Premacy leg ability, which grants a 30% damage reduction when taking damage from a target of the same leg type, which in his case of course is biped. Now, I can honestly go on and on and on over how wonderful Chrotojil is and what he offers, but that's honestly about 80% bias talking. So, bias aside, he really doesn't stray too far from the norm of what you'd expect from a conventional KBT. Missile, of course, is a gunpowder-based skill that is an explosive AoE, which means it will damage all 4 parts equally or spread the damage across all active parts. Right arm of rifle is a conventional and basic shooting skill, so no drawback or any major advantage to it for its balance. And left arm of Gatling is a scattered AoE, meaning it will damage 1 part normally and 2 others at random at 1/3 of the damage each. So for his overall pretty solid balance as a conventional shooter, dedicated damage is definitely not his strong suit naturally, as you'd expect of most KBTs in the family. Others include Kantaros, Metabee, Metal Beetle, and so on and so forth. But he does honestly offer a lot of, Chrotojil in particular does offer a couple of perks that does help him stand out. Stat-wise, even though he is relatively close and identical to what you'd expect of most others, it's primarily his leg ability that lets him stand out. Because compared to most other KBTs that may focus on damage or even a bonus terrain that their legs are good on, Chrotojil, on the other hand, plays a more defense-oriented game as an auxiliary shooter. In this case, taking the damage, including the damage reduction when taking damage from incoming bipedal enemies. Now, of course, in high-end meta, this can honestly be either very handy or useless, depending on if the incoming enemy is using a biped leg or not. But given that if you look at a ratio and percentage of most of the bots pretty much in existence from the days of Metabee 1 to even the newcomers of S, a very solid chunk of them, I'd say about 70% or more, are bipedal based, which means that in most cases he will honestly have this damage reduction kick in and keep his overall loss of HP at a minimum. As a pure set score, I do have to rate Chrotojil a pretty solid 7 out of 10, like I mentioned, for his very solid balance as an auxiliary and conventional shooter, especially with the fact that his stats are honestly pretty nice across the board. Like I mentioned, he is a little more defense-oriented, so he does have slightly higher HP than the norm, but again, but at the cost, of course, being just a little bit slower than what you'd expect in comparison to, say, Metabee or even Grand Beetle in this case. As mixed parts, on the other hand, I do have to rate him equally at a 7 out of 10, once again for that incredible balance that he can offer. Rifle and Gatling, you can never ever go wrong with anywhere in any team that needs a conventional shooter. Missile, of course, a little more niche, but still handy all the same. But his legs is honestly really going to be where it's at with that conditional leg damage reduction, especially if you can pay attention to what the enemy is packing on their team build, and if they are packing incoming bipedal types, these legs will definitely come in handy when it comes to keeping damage as minimal as possible to Chrotojil.